call the meeting to order. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Mr. Harper will read our equity statement this month, and it's on the front.
The Columbia Public Schools, through action and in partnership with families and community, will uphold the values, policies, and practices that promote cultural competence. We will accept, embrace, and empower students and staff in their individual identities to establish and sustain human dignity, justice, and equitable treatment, and inclusiveness in the classroom and the workplace.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. We have a lot of exciting special recognition this month, so we'll go ahead and kick that off. Go ahead, Dr. Porter, Mr. Gooch, whoever is introducing our awardees.
Thank you for that constructive feedback. I'd like to welcome Dr. Brandon Russell from the Career Center to the podium, please.
Okay, I think we got this organized. We're going to make this pretty quick. So I will start off with saying this. Columbia Career Center's CTSOs, those are career and technical student organizations, have worked hard all year to prepare for local, state, and national competitions. This year, mind you, career and technical student organizations is one of our 3 focus areas, right? So this year, we've had a record 80 students qualified to compete in their respective national competitions from our 6 different CTSOs. So tonight you'll hear from Future Business Leaders of America, DECA, National FFA, HOSA, Future Health Professionals, Skills USA, and Educators Rising. Tonight we're recognizing over 30 students that received a first place in their respective state competitions. All right, so wow, they all are up here. So I'm going to try and figure this out. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to introduce each CTSO and let them go down the side, and then you can shake all their hands at the end. So first tonight, we recognize our students from HOSA who will compete in Houston, Texas from June 25th to the 29th. And we have in the biomedical debate champions, Hashir Bariz from Rockbridge High School, Shahab Bariz from Rockbridge High School, Kira Lindblom from Rockbridge High School. And then in community awareness, first place, Iris Ma from Rockbridge High School, and Aditi Patel from Rockbridge High School. And then in emergency medical technician, Asil Adam and Satya Yarasi from Rockbridge High School. In HOSA Bowl, we had, all from Rockbridge High School, Alaman, Jesli Lamuz Guerrera, Sophia Lee, and Rithvik Metu. Again, all from Rockbridge High School. So these are our HOSA winners. So if you guys will go that way. And we'll shake hands here in a minute. All right, our next group, that was Christine Roberson. She's the lead advisor for HOSA, Health Professionals. All right, next we have Educators Rising here with, where's Miss Greenplate? She hiding over there? Okay. Miss Greenplate is here with her students. In first place in job interview was Mary Cadena from Hickman High School. First place in Educators Rising Moment from Rockbridge High School, Jayla Kemp. From Battle High School, Teacher Creative Materials was J.C. Rowland. And then a team event, Ethical Dilemma, 3 students from Rockbridge High School, Danielle Dreyer, Isabel Ramsey, and Kyler Shockley. And then last but not least, we have a lesson plan delivery STEM, Amanda Mahaney from Battle High School. All right, those are your Ed Rising first place winners. So you guys want to slide that way, line up down the side. All right, next is Skills USA. And not all were able to be here tonight, but we have our bacon and pastry chef, extraordinaire, Sydney Bliss from Rockbridge High School. Not here tonight, I don't think, is Principals of Engineering Technology, Jonas Freeland from Rockbridge High School. And we have a community service team made up of Emerson Haynes from Rockbridge High School, Joe Metzke from Hickman High School, and Daniel Garcia from Hickman High School. Also, first place in engineering technology design, a team of 3. I'm pretty sure Jacob Moore is here from Rockbridge High School, and teammates Marley Poston from Rockbridge High School and Elijah Wilcox from Hickman High School placed first. And then we had last state champion this year, electronics technology from Hickman High School, Dylan Torales Berta. Those are your winners in Skills USA. All right. All right, next is FFA. We have our state champion vet science team, at least half of them, right? On the team that couldn't be here is Jack Malone and Tanner Neal, both from Rockbridge High School. And then with us tonight is Hayden Duncan from Rockbridge High School and Abby Eddy from Hickman High School. And their instructor, their team, their coach, Mr. Duncan, is with them tonight. All right. And FBLA. So we had from Introduction to Business Education from Rockbridge High School, Jenna Lynn. And then Introduction to Parliamentary Procedure. Be careful, she might be able to teach you some things. She should stay and watch and critique you, right? Sophia Lee. All right, and those are our FBLA winners. And then we had from Hickman High School in Automotive Service Marketing from DECA. Ashish Gadacharya was also a state champion in that DECA event. And they travel to Anaheim, California in April. So I forgot to mention this. Ed Rising is going to Washington, D.C., June 27th to July 1st. Skills USA is going to Atlanta, Georgia from June 24th to 28th. FFA is going to Indianapolis, Indiana this fall from October 23rd to 26th. And FBLA, they got the short straw. FBLA is going to Orlando, Florida, June 29th to June 2nd this summer. So lots of travel. We've been scrambling to get enough money to make these things happen, but I'm excited to say we've done it. We're going to make it happen, and so we're excited about all 80 of our students competing and representing Columbia Public Schools. So we're going to start and let you guys go through here and shake hands. They're going to go this way? Okay. They're gonna go this way. They're gonna follow this way. Good job. Nice job. Good job. Nice job. Nice job, team. Shake hands. Congratulations. Good job.
Congratulations. I love seeing you.
Sorry, I just popped your finger on that one.
Congratulations. Thank you for dealing with us. Coming up tomorrow. Congratulations.
Yes, please. Congratulations.
Well, if there was any question if we had outstanding students at CPS, I think that just answered it. How about another round of applause? Go ahead, Mr. Wolby.
No, yeah, I also think just as what was shared by Dr. Russell, please make donations to the CACC to help out with all of this, please.
It is with great admiration and excitement that we celebrate our National Merit finalists from Rockbridge High School. National Merit Finalists is an exceptional honor that represents years of dedication, perseverance, and academic achievement. This recognition not only celebrates outstanding performance on the PSAT, but also acknowledges commitment to learning and intellectual growth. Being a National Merit Finalist signifies that you stand among the top students in the nation, distinguishing yourself through academic abilities, leadership potentials, and contributions to school and community. Receiving National Merit Finalist status is a personal milestone, but also a testament to the support and guidance of educators, mentors, and family who have encouraged and inspired these scholars along the way. I would like to present to you the following Rockbridge High School students who are National Merit Finalists. Rebecca Buchley, Paris Fang, Suba Gatum, Donovan Kim, and Julia Kim. If you can please come forward. We will recognize them at Rockbridge this week. It's also with great admiration and respect that we recognize our speech and debate state champions. Their dedication, passion, and hard work have led them to this outstanding achievement. It's my honor to ask Dr. Danielle Johnson to come to the podium to help celebrate these students.
Hello. I feel like I should tell everyone it is salute to seniors at Rockbridge tonight. So no, these students are not, the ones that are not here on my behalf and the National Merit Scholarships are not standing you up for poor reason. But anyway, we had amazing showing at the Michigan Speech and Debate Championships this year. We had Rockbridge High School place first in the state in speech and debate. Not everyone's here today, but if you are, please come forward. Gia Shetty, she placed fourth in Lincoln Douglas debate. Kara Lindblom and Shahab Bariz placed third in public forum debate. Michael Kuba and Victor Petruk placed fourth in public forum debate. And Zay Yance and Aditi Patel placed second in policy debate. So, and everyone who's not here is either studying for an AP test. These are sometimes tryhards who we have to remind to touch grass, as the students say. But these girls, they know they're going to get a 5 tomorrow without the extra studying, right? So anyway, so Kara and Aditi, also really strong leaders on our team. So speech and debate's a lot like track. You get points for everybody that does well, and because every single student that we brought in debate broke and qualified past to out rounds and placed either second through fourth, that is why Rockbridge was, for the first time ever, state champions at Michigan Speech and Debate. Still chasing that first overall for one student though, but we have had that multiple times, but not a ton. But this year we had Sathvik Kanan from Hickman High School. You guys might recognize him as an amazing speaker from our convocation. It will be of absolute no surprise to anyone in this room who saw that speech that he was first in the state in extemporaneous speaking, an event in which he draws a question and 30 minutes later delivers a 7-minute research speech on that topic. So we're headed to nationals. Everyone behind me is headed to nationals, and we're hoping that we come back with even more good news, and we also accept donations. So.
Just to be fair, please donate to speech and debate.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. We're also thrilled to have another opportunity to honor our outstanding educators in Columbia Public Schools. We have a rotating schedule, as you know, for board meetings to make sure that every school has a chance to be recognized. The teachers joining us tonight exemplify excellence, They are exceptional educators who foster strong connections with their students and provide invaluable support to their schools, colleagues, and administrators. It is my great privilege to introduce them to you this evening. From Rosetta Avenue Center, Bonita Fitzmaurice. And her entourage. From Locust Street Expressive Arts Elementary, Taryn White. And the Gifted Center, their representative is Liz Brown. Please join me in congratulating all three.
And we will now have Dr. Holtz introduce our substitute of the month. Thank you again to all of our outstanding educators.
All right, good evening. The administration is pleased to recognize 2 EduStaff substitutes as substitutes of the month. These substitutes are nominated by CPS employees. First to be recognized is Renee Burton. Renee joined the EduStaff team in Columbia in May 2019. She has worked throughout the district in a variety of positions, including many long-term positions. This school year, she has been filling short-notice learning special assignments as one of the team substitutes. EduStaff has received numerous feedback, going back years now, praising Mrs. Burton for her dedication to education and serving our schools with excellence. Most recently, she was nominated by kindergarten teacher Kara Wilson at Cedar Ridge Elementary for making a lasting positive impact on her classroom during her previous maternity leave and for returning to substitute at Cedar for special needs classrooms. Beyond her passion for loving students and helping them and bringing a positive presence wherever she serves, Mrs. Wilson echoed the gratitude so many have expressed for Renee's hard work and for being such a wonderful substitute in our community. Thank you, Renee, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Our second substitute of the month is Becca Young. Becca joined the EduStaff team in Columbia in September of 2023. She has dedicated her service to our early learning programs and was nominated by ECSE teacher Lisa Zartman at the Early Childhood Discovery Center for being a godsend to our school this year. Becca is willing to serve on short notice. She has shown flexibility in filling many different roles at our school. The students at our small school all know and adore Becca, as do all of the teachers and staff members. The veteran teacher of 26 years went on to praise, Becca is by far one of the best subs because she integrates so seamlessly into different classrooms that student learning continues despite teacher absence. Thank you and congratulations, Becca.
Thank you to our outstanding subs. We are always looking to increase the pool for lucky winners. And contact Dr. Holtz if you're interested. We will move on to public comment. We have 3 people signed up for public comment tonight. They have all registered in advance and they will each have 3 minutes, which will count down on the timer on the wall. Comments related to disciplinary actions or other matters which could be the subject of a grievance process or comments that are derogatory of any person, business, or organization will be ruled out of order. Please refrain from any use of obscene language or disruptive or threatening behavior, and please, we ask the audience for no participation, meaning no comments, no applause, etc. Patrons who did not register in advance may always make a written public comment by completing a form on the back table, and you can put that form in the blue box, and those do get sent to the board. Please come forward after I've read your name and the item you will be discussing. And first, we have Suzanne Sawyer giving general public comment.
Good evening. I'm Suzanne Sawyer. I'm a teacher at Hickman High School. I live at 1412 Jake Lane. I'm here speaking on behalf of teachers at Hickman and throughout the district who are desperate for our district to implement a meaningful, no-tolerance cell phone policy that completely prohibits cell phones in the classroom. The current policies are inadequate and completely ineffective at combating the worsening cell phone crisis. Teachers cannot compete with cell phones, and there's overwhelming research showing the negative impact they have on student achievement and mental health. There's a plethora of data that shows the harm cell phones cause that far outweighs any potential benefits. It seems a logical step to improve achievement and combat declining mental health would be to seriously address one of the leading causes of these problems. We can no longer leave this up to teacher discretion, leaving teachers with the financial and behavioral burdens of creating a safe storage system and managing all aspects of enforcing the policy. This also pits teachers against each other and administration. The issue is pervasive in every class, and we are exhausted. We simply do not have the time or, frankly, the will anymore to contact parents, write referrals, and continuously remind students to put them away day after day with no consistently enforced consequence. The amount of time required for us to do this means losing valuable hours of instruction and planning time. There are also a growing number of districts in Missouri that have banned cell phones and have seen tremendous improvements in student achievement, mental health, and classroom engagement, as well as a significant reduction in cyberbullying, fights, and other harmful behaviors. 2 years ago, Moberly School District implemented a zero-tolerance policy where students must leave their phones in their cars or lockers throughout the entire school day. If they do not, the phone is kept in the office for the day, and the parent must pick it up. Repeated violations result in long-term office storage and Saturday detentions. While the first couple of weeks were challenging, teachers report today that the school environment has improved dramatically, and students even appreciate the change, reporting that they are more focused and social, feel less stressed, and are enjoying real conversations with their peers. There is simply no excuse for continuing to refuse an effective policy. The argument that students might need phones in case of emergency or to contact parents is invalid. All students have laptops and can email parents, and parents can still contact the office if needed. If there were a real emergency, the last thing we want is students distracted by cell phones because we need them focused on us, and we need to minimize cell disruption for first responders. If it's a liability we're afraid of, there's no reason we can't be like other districts and clearly state in our policy manuals that we are not responsible for loss, damage, theft of personal devices, since they are prohibited in the first place. So we ask you to consider the future you want for CPS students and staff. Do we want to continue to see how test scores and increased depression? Do we want to continue to see low test scores and increased depression and anxiety? Do we want to continue to provide an outlet for cyberbullying on our watch? Do we want our teachers
Thank
to
you,
teach
Ms. Sawyer.
or
I'm
police
so
cell
sorry.
phones?
I'm so sorry, but we have to keep it at 3 minutes. I'm sorry. I know, thank you. I'm sorry to cut you off. That's just, we have to be consistent, and when I let one person go over and I don't let another person go over, then it gets tricky. I'm so sorry. Okay, so watch the clock, talk fast if you need to. Next, we have Katie Barnes giving general public comment. I was done, I promise. Is Katie here? Okay, Katie, if you are back there, come on up, and if you are on your way, maybe we'll get to you. Next, we have Brandy Nichols giving general public comment.
Hey everyone, I'm Brady Nichols. I'm here for the CPS graduation of Hickman. I have two kids in CPS. Even though I'm a former student, I noticed that the distance between we are experiencing black students, according to the Boone County Dispatch, black students in CPS are more than 2.5 times less to succeed, practice in advance of Benjamin Compliment. I'm sorry, I'm reading off of a thing that I wrote. And tenants for in the past 10 years, we have allowed black third grade scores 40 to 50% lower reading than non-black classmates. It's 15 to 20% lower than Hispanics and Latino students. So are the scores and major students in our community are realizing the board. Are y'all under, can you hear me? Okay, I'm just saying, because the way everybody's looking like, oh, come here. Can I use you real quick? Did I say everything right? Okay. I think I was done. Okay, the problems according to each tablets and parent teachers in the school education, our icons, and then the pre-8th grade programs according to outcomes in the math, reading, and the communication connecting. It's free, right? And especially what black people family needs are pretending that the school boards are taking actions and standing to support, leading us into need of success and efforts. And that's the end of it. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. All right, tonight for Scholar Voice, we have Hayden Barnes, Lillian Bridgman, and Drew Phillips coming to talk with us about an experience they had along with their United Challenge coordinator and I think Rockbridge teacher, Rachel Victor.
Hi, thank you for having us this evening. I'm Rachel Victor. I work at Rockbridge High School, and these are just a few of my lucky individuals that I get to work with every day from Rockbridge. But I don't want to forget our Hickman crew and our battle crew. These are two of my athletes out of the 86 from the also would be Hickman and Rockbridge. This is one of my volunteers out of 120 that put on the United Challenge. Without them, I couldn't do this. Hayden has been with me for 3 years helping put on the United Challenge. So I'm going to let him speak first.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hayden Barnes. I'm a junior at Rockbridge High School, and I have served as co-president of Bruins United for the past 3 years. This position allows me the opportunity to help organize the United Challenge athletic event each year. United Challenge started 10 years ago to bridge the gap and provide an inclusive athletic event. This event is open to all 9th to 12th grade students who attend Rockbridge, Hickman, Battle High Schools, as well as Rosetta. The goal of the United Challenge is to give high school students with disabilities the opportunity to compete and represent their school. The faculty and staff of these schools recognize and embrace the abilities and achievements of all students with different ability levels through the opportunity to participate in organized, fun, and athletic events. Any student with a disability is welcome to participate in the event and is paired with a peer from their school to accompany them in multiple athletic motor events. Events may include, but not be limited to, track, football toss, basketball shooting, soccer, baseball, softball, and many others. The United Challenge has been an important inclusive activity for the high schools over the past decade, and the students look forward to participating every year. We have had many great athletes come and compete for their schools this year, with Rockbridge taking first, Hickman second, and Battle third. To me, this event is an opportunity for students of all abilities to come together in an environment where limits don't exist and smiles are contagious. Over the past 3 years, I can say without a doubt that the relationships I have built through this event are some of my most meaningful, and the thought that I only have one United Challenge left in my high school career hurts just a little bit. The skills and lessons I have learned through this event will follow me for the rest of my life, and for that, I am truly grateful to Ms. Victor and CPS for giving me that opportunity. Thank you.
This is Lillian. She has been with us for 3 years, and she is a junior. You got this.
Hi, I'm Lillian Bridgman. I'm a junior in Rockbridge High School and one half of the Bruins United Challenge. I enjoy looking forward to competing with the other schools every year. It brings everyone together competing with the other school teams. It brings me joy seeing everyone working as a team together. It feels like a party every time enjoying the Burns United Challenge. Thank you.
This is Drew Phillips. He is also a junior, and he has also competed for 3 years.
Hi, my name is Drew Phillips. The United Challenge is important to me because we compete against a lot of schools. We compete against Battle, Hickman. It's like none other. The United Challenge is really important to me because I get to spend time with my friends, including my friend William Bridgman, Liz Seath, and Alex Taylor and Aline. I'm really grateful for the time I spent. I give a special thanks to Miss Victor, even though sometimes we have hard times in class, but we can always figure them out. I thank her so much for all this appreciation that she's given us in this time and effort that she's been working on to make this possible. So thank you, Miss Victor, and thank you.
Well, I'm sorry to say to our CMNEA President Noel Gilzo and our CMSTA President Carrie Stith, y'all done been overshadowed already. Thank you again to Ms. Victor and those students for coming to talk to us about that awesome experience they've had. Teacher representatives, you're up.
I do want to thank the board for initiating student voice as a part of the proceedings. That really brings a lot of light to what happens here. And it's always so great to hear about all these amazing things students are doing in so many different areas, especially the CACC presentation this morning or this evening was, just so diverse in terms of the things the students are doing. And we've got a lot of winners in this district, and I'm very proud of our students. My computer just fell asleep. Oh, it's... It's about time we get new devices, I think. It's not battery dead. It just went to sleep and then didn't recognize where I was. All the time, and it kicks me off Wi-Fi. It's great. Anyway, I'm back. Good. Thank you for your patience. Good evening. I'm Noelle Gilzo, president of CMNEA. I stand before you as an individual teacher, but it isn't just my voice I bring here each month, but a collective voice of nearly 730 educators from buildings and programs across the district. Last year, I implored you to actively and mindfully seek teacher input on the decisions placed before you. And this year, our teacher advisory committees for elementary and secondary met several times to consider important issues. Thank you for following through on our request. Last year in May, I brought survey results to you discussing the need for smaller class sizes, particularly in Title I schools, because educators reported that behavior was so out of control and the support so lacking that meaningful instruction was not occurring regularly, not just for troubled students, but for entire classes and even grade levels. I suggested that to improve academic achievement, we must lower student-teacher ratios in title buildings, and we must materially support student mental health. Students cannot learn meaningfully if they don't feel safe, secure, and have their needs met. I repeated Maslow before Bloom. Maybe you remember that. This year, the district responded with additional FTE in title buildings to reduce class sizes so teachers can support all of their students more effectively. We have also seen an increase in para, instructional aid, and classroom aid positions alongside additional counselors for more academic and emotional support. Thank you. This year, in October, I described how educators were crying out for a systemic, consistent policy on cell phones because our scholars are not self-disciplined enough to stay off their phones. I reminded our stakeholders that if we really want to improve student achievement, we have to establish a coherent policy on phone use in schools. In fact, comments on our bargaining survey reflected this desire in a ratio of 3-to-1 overcompensation concerns even. Our concerns have gained traction with parents and school PTAs across the district. Various stakeholders see the need for action on cell phones. Thankfully, we are being updated about progress on this front tonight. I noticed that the cell phone procedures for middle school students is more strict than the one for high school students. Middle school students are not to have access to phones during the school day at all, whereas high school students are not to have them during instructional times, but may have access during passing periods and lunch. I wonder if this creates a slippery slope for enforcement, particularly for teachers, especially after lunch. Previously, there was a caveat that stated that phone use in classrooms would be up to teacher discretion. That one sentence would have undermined the effectiveness of a cell phone policy, making some teachers the bad guys who enforce the rule, and the other ones the cool teachers who let the students play on their phones. That pits teacher against teacher and isn't sustainable. I am happy to not see that sentence in the presentation here. It seems our desire for a consistent phone policy was heard. While these are steps in the right direction, I am wondering if there should be specific protocols for phone collection, storage, and parental retrieval for students who refuse to abide by the rules about phone use. CPS could include a simple waiver on the technology form parents sign each year that states that students who bring personal technology do so at their own risk, and that CPS and its employees are not liable for damages, loss, or theft of devices that were brought to campus. I also wonder if allowing high school students access to phones during non-instructional times, but disallowing it during class, will reduce the number of vape meetup texts, social media bullying, and instigations to fight, which comprise some of the concerns with students' access to phones in the first place. This is a sticky issue which warrants the proposed actions and further consideration. Thank you for the opportunity to present to the board on behalf of the members of CMNEA, and thank you for your service.
Good evening. Last week was Teacher Appreciation Week. CMSTA gave each one of our members a small gift of appreciation. We were excited to see parents, community members, and administration celebrating the amazing work that educators have done this year. The demands that are being put on educators grow every year. We know that we cannot help as much as we would like, but we want teachers to know that we care and we understand and will do everything that we can to support CPS teachers. CMSTA could not be more proud of the CPS teachers and staff. It is also great to see the amazing things that our students are accomplishing during their time at CPS. Tonight, our list of students that have worked hard in their area of interest and accomplishment is outstanding and further proof of the great things that are happening here at CPS. The student voice section of the board meetings has been outstanding this year. I know today's left me with some tears. Seeing these students come out and speak in front of the board every week every month has been outstanding. The future is bright with these young scholars leading the way. We have lots to celebrate at CMSTA. We want to give a special shout out to our Northeast Region Middle School Educator of the Year, Danielle Sipe. She was presented with her award at the Northeast Region Spring Banquet Celebration. Her dedication to students did not go unnoticed by her colleagues and teachers across the state. CMSTA is very proud of her and her accomplishments. Last week, CMSTA hosted our annual end-of-the-year celebration. We took time to celebrate all of our retirees and award winners. We had many nominees in each category, and the winners were the CMSTA Middle School Educator of the Year is Dina Rice. The CMSTA High School Educator of the Year was David Graham. And the CMSTA Elementary Educator of the Year was me. That's for you, Miss Walters. Miss Waters, that was for you. I was very surprised to receive that award. But we would also like to recognize the CMSTA members who are retiring at the end of this school year. Michelle Green from Alpha Hart Lewis, 6 years of service to CPS. David Graham at Rockbridge High School with 26 years of service. And Maria Cox from Ridgeway with 33 years of service to CPS. We know that we have many other teachers across the district retiring, and we cannot thank them enough for their years of service and dedication to our students and district. These educators will be greatly missed for their dedication and commitment to education in so many ways. As we talk about boundary changes tonight, we know that this is a very passionate subject for all involved. I wanted to give a huge shout out to Karen, who took the time to talk to parents and really listen to concerns, teachers, and community members. This is an impossible task, as you can't make every request a possibility. It was eye-opening to attend these meetings, and I learned so much because of the outstanding work that we must do together to make the best changes for all students involved. I hope that we remember that there just was a rezoning of schools for many schools just 2 years ago, and many of these proposals would move some of our at-risk families. Thank you to the district staff for listening to educators about concerns with cell phones in the classroom and preparing a cell phone policy for middle and high school. Many teachers have shared the concern of cell phone usage during the school day, and having a policy that is district-wide will help educators hold all students to the same expectations, which helps students, parents, and staff understand what's expected during the school day. Okay, tonight's an emotional one for me, as it will be my last board address as the CMSTA president. Sorry. I have served in this position for 3 years, and my term limit has been reached. I started this position during COVID and learned that this position that I have loved, working with the partnership with you, with the cabinet, and with our superintendent. I have been able to build a strong partnership that I have felt has strengthened the relationship that we have with CPS. I am leaving our teachers and you in great hands with a familiar name, Jessica Tierney, who will be taking over the president position. Lindsay Mueller will continue as my vice president, and I will take over the secretary position, and Burke McCrae will take over as our treasurer. As always, thank you for your time and dedication to our roles.
Aw, thank you. All right, we will now have an attendance area update with Mr. Ofield and Mr. Gooch and Ms. Jackson.
Thank you so much, and good evening to Board President Waters, Vice President Mr. Lyman, and all the board members represented, and then our superintendent, Dr. Yearwood. I am Lizelle Oldfield, the incoming Chief Operating Officer for Columbia Public Schools. It is my privilege to present to you for the first time in this role. So tonight we are here to discuss the essential phase in our ongoing project to redefine our school's attendance boundaries. I am pleased to introduce Ms. Karen Jackson with Wilpart, who has been instrumental in guiding us through the comprehensive study of our attendance zones. Karen and her team have worked diligently to analyze data, trends, and community feedback to help us understand the best paths forward for our district. As we present the results tonight from our study, we seek your insight and directives to refine and finalize the options that we will bring before you. Your guidance is crucial as we aim to make decisions that best serve our students and our community. I also really want to take a moment to really express our gratitude to our scholars and the community who actively participated in all 7 of our listening sessions. Their contributions have been invaluable, providing diverse perspectives that are critical to this process. At this time, I invite Karen to take us through our results. Thank you.
Oh, okay. My assistant. Thank you. This is me, yeah. Is it sharing?
Yeah, it will.
Okay. And I can just Control L and it'll.
No, just press the 3 dots here into presentation and you'll be fine.
Perfect, okay. You're awesome, thank you so much. All right, I messed up the mic last time, so I'll try to speak a little closer to it. Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be back. We had an awesome week last week. We had a couple hundred people come to our, excuse me, our listening sessions. We had great feedback. I just want to let you know we are getting what we need to move forward in this process, and I'm very pleased about that. So tonight I'm just going to be taking you through process overview like we usually do, and then we'll be going through the results. Keep in mind we just closed the survey yesterday, so these are pretty preliminary. Awesome. So this is our overall boundary planning process. If you look at that yellow box, that's kind of where we are. So we had our initial boundary options that have been vetted by the community. Now we are back at the drawing board. So we will be utilizing that feedback moving forward to inform our finalized options that we will be presenting about a month from now. Again, this is our remaining process timeline. I've highlighted where we are, May 13th, as well as the phases. I'm not going to go through those, but we are utilizing a phased process. Phase 1 and 2 happening in 25-26, and then phase 3 occurring in 26-27. So moving on to our options and the results. So this is an overall, just an overview of where we received responses from. Blue is showing a lower density of responses or fewer responses per square mile. Anything in red is showing our highest areas of density. So you can see overlaid on top of this are the elementary attendance areas. You can see there's a hot spot right near Grant Elementary School, another one near Shepherd, and then over just like northwest of Gentry. That's kind of where we're looking right now. In terms of school affiliation, you can see on the right here we have a table of where each of our respondents were, or which schools each of our respondents were affiliated with. Keep in mind, both of these questions you could answer multiple times, so that's not going to add up to 2,219. That is the total number of responses that we got, which is amazing. The last time we did this process, I don't even think we got close to that. So we got a huge response from the community, which is excellent. Like I said, we are really getting the feedback that we need to move forward in this process. So with each of these, I'm just going to go through the option very briefly and then move on to the results. So this is option 1. The map on the slide shows option 1. The background colors are each going to show the elementary attendance areas, orange outlines are showing the middle school attendance areas, and then the purple outlines behind the orange lines are showing the high school attendance areas, as well as the metrics on the right. So option 1 received about 28% or almost 29% support from those who responded. We had about 64% of folks, or 63% of folks who did not support option 1. Some of the comments we heard is that this increases commute times for some. There are safety concerns with inexperienced drivers on the highway. There are some feeder pattern splits in this option, which are not ideal. Some did appreciate the balanced future utilizations at the high school. And some neighborhoods did prefer option 1 because it kept their area intact and attending the same schools. On the right, we have the folks who, or the respondents who both support and then do not support. So on top, we have those who supported and where those surveys came from. And then on the bottom, we have do not support. In these maps, they're all going to kind of look the same, where the blue areas are showing more sparse density, and then the yellow is showing denser responses. So this is option 2. Option 2 did move the fewest number of students. So on the left, we have the map, and on the right, we have the metrics with this one. And then looking at option 2, we had about 35% of respondents who supported this option, and 54% who did not support, with 11% neutral. Some things that we heard about this option are folks tend to like it because it moves the least number of students. There were concerns about increased commute times and the impact to walkability. There were concerns about the socioeconomic impact at several buildings. And then some did appreciate maintaining highways as natural boundary lines where possible in this option. And then on the right, of course, we have our support and do not support maps, just like the last one. This is option 3. So on the left, we have the map, and on the right, we have our metrics for it. Option 3, we had about 31% of our respondents who supported, and close to 59, almost 60% of folks who did not support this option. In the comments, we heard that there's opposition to changes that would require longer commutes or crossing major highways. This was a major theme of the responses that we got. There were concerns about proximity and impacting students that could potentially walk to school. There were concerns about impacting families that moved to a specific area to attend specific schools. We got a lot of that feedback last week. There were logistical concerns with drop-off and pickup and extracurriculars at buildings. And then some did like that it minimizes multiple attendance area changes over the past couple of years. And on the right, we have those who supported and those who did not support based on geography. So this is option 4. Left, we have our map. On the right, we have our metrics. Something to note about option 4 is that this is the one with the very clean feeders. And that was something that folks liked. So we had about 52% of folks say that they like this one. This was our most liked option. And 37% did not support this option. As I said, many did support the improved feeder patterns that option 4 offers. There were concerns about students crossing major highways to get to school, specifically at the high school level. Many felt that this option maintains neighborhood cohesiveness better than the others, and some appreciated the low number of students moved at the secondary level. And on the right, we have those who support and those who do not support. And our last option, option 5. Left, we have our map. On the right, we have our metrics for option 5. In this option, we had about 19% of our respondents who supported the option, and close to almost 70% of respondents did not support this option. With this one, we had concerns about longer commute times and, again, crossing busy intersections. Like I said, that was a major theme of what we heard. There were concerns about the economic disparity among schools. Some really appreciated the clean middle to high school feeder patterns. And then there were some concerns about multiple attendance area changes over the past few years. Then on the right, you can see which areas supported and which did not support this option. So with this, as I mentioned, we will be going through all of the feedback. I'll just be frank, I have not had a chance to go through everything yet. There's close to 3,000 or 4,000 comments that we've got to get through, so that's going to take some time. But as we're going through that, we will be making updates to the options and then combining those options based on the feedback that we hear. We are planning to come back to you June 10th, I believe, with 2 to 3 finalized options based on the feedback that we heard throughout this section of the process. And with that, is there any further guidance that you'd like us to consider as we begin to combine and update options? And it's okay if you don't have any.
I would imagine there's going to be a couple of questions and comments. Thank you so much for doing this preliminary work, for sure. I know you were very, very busy last week. As we go through new options, I just want to make clear to the public that the expectation of, or the hope from the board is that if there are new options that are like combinations or changes from the existing options, we send out another survey. And we might need to also have like one open house event that just our central office staff and some board members would come to just to receive feedback because things are going to be changing. My biggest question is looking at all the data from the options. It looked like high schools, just because of where the large cohort of students is traveling through, high schools are going to be crowded kind of no matter what we do.
Yep.
And we know that the enrollment at especially Rockbridge High School is not necessarily the same number as its utilization, as its capacity, because students have AUT, students are at the Career Center, and that's true of any of our high schools. Have, like, some students take online classes, they take Career Center classes. So what I'm getting at is, would it be possible for us to see an option that keeps high school boundaries where they are?
Absolutely.
And
yeah, we can do that.
Maybe combine keeping high school boundaries with changing just elementary, and then middle where we might need to, but I think that would be of interest, at least to me.
Yeah,
I see some nodding.
That's certainly
so.
something we can explore. It may just be pushing the overutilization, especially in the Southwest Corridor, down the road a couple years. But you're absolutely right. We are showing some very high classes or high class sizes moving through the system right now, followed by some lower ones at our lower grades. So it could be a temporary tightness at those schools.
And especially at Rockbridge, because, I mean, I know about Rockbridge because I went there, and AUT, it's very popular, and in any given period, I think we were going to try to check on data to see any given period how many students are out of the building because they have AUT or are at the Career Center. Yeah. And that would help us understand, like, where are we actually at with capacity. Mm-hmm. So that'll be important to know. Just in general, my priority would be to maintain walkability and try to keep neighborhoods intact where possible. I do think those are important things. And I keep coming back to proximity because I think it's decreased commute times are so important, and the ability, and the closer you are to a school, the more likely your child is to be able to participate in activities, and the more likely the families are to be able to participate. So that's all I got. Who else on the board has Mr. Willoughby?
Ms. Jackson, I know that we talked about this, and so it's more of just making sure that there's a confirmation and it's recorded and people in the public can hear it too on a larger scale. When it comes to, as you're refining and looking at all the feedback and making some refined map options for us, there aren't going to be any new neighborhoods that would be impacted within these refined options. The only neighborhoods that would be included in some refined options would be already the ones that were impacted in options 1 through 5. Is that correct?
As much as possible.
As much as possible, okay.
Now, with this new request to keep the high school attendance areas intact, we may, like Gentry and John Warner, for example, there may be a split somewhere that we didn't anticipate in our last round. But we really do try not to move anybody that hasn't been in play when we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the main factor that could impact that, and I'm just repeating just so in that sense of there, is due to the fact of the request that was just made because of high school. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And then I guess My second one isn't a question, it's more of comment based off of the talking around a high school space. I do think that long-term wise, if we go down a route where we don't change high school boundaries, we do need to really have a strong conversation around a commitment then of what does utilization look like, and do we need to go back to our original like long-term bond plan of finding land for another high school and building another high school, whether that is a comprehensive or a more of a magnet high school. I do just think that if we're going to, I'm like future forecasting this, right? So I'm not saying that's where we're going as a board, but like if we end up in late June, early July to making a decision of we're not changing the high school boundaries, I do think then that we really need to consider going back to what we said originally, like we were like, we're not going to do that anymore, and really have a serious conversation about potentially is it necessary.
Ms. Burrow.
First, I want to say I've heard wonderful things from the community about how awesome Karen is. They love you, at least the ones I've talked to. You have done an amazing, amazing job in communicating with everyone. I did not take the survey. I'm so sorry. So my question is, was there an option to choose none? Or if you took the survey, you had to choose one of the 5 options?
So they weren't pitted against one another. It was, what is your level of support of this option independent of the other options?
So you could have said, I hate it for all 5 options.
They were not ranked.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That is great. And regarding the high school changes, I appreciate President Waters asking for that optional map and thinking about the future. I believe one of the big things that I heard was I don't want to navigate the 6370 connector, and I don't want to have my kids on the road when we're trying to change 70 to 3-lane highway. And I think that construction's supposed to be done sometime in 2027. So long-range planning as we move forward, if we end up keeping boundaries as they are, then looking at potentially either, as Blake was saying, if we're going to move forward with another building, or moving boundaries after that construction, 27, 28, or something like that. And thanks for getting those numbers on the number of kids that are actually in the buildings. That'll be very helpful.
I think so too. Thanks.
Ms. Snodgrass.
Sure. I want to also thank you, Karen, because I know you've answered a lot of questions for me and run some additional maps and scenarios and stuff. And I appreciate that all the feedback you're taking seriously and really looking at the different ways that we can maneuver it. I want to say that for me, I think one of the things that has come up in a few of the options, and I don't know specifically where and which ones, is there are a few instances where it does feel like folks who are currently within the mile or the 2 mile for secondary, right, sort of radius, are getting moved to different schools. And I guess for me, that to me doesn't feel logical. I know we're trying to balance everything out and it's really complicated because of where population density is in the schools. And, as noted in one of the sessions where I was, right, like someone has to be in the school. Like we have buildings, we need people in them just because, everyone is closer to a different school. But I think that this idea, as was mentioned before, of like sort of maintaining some of the walkability and really trying to limit those commute times is really important. And I know you had sort of shown me a version that had been done of sort of what happens if everyone just goes to their closest school, and that, it gives us some schools at like 150% and some at 24%, again, because of where people are. And I guess, sorry, I know Blake's trying to promise everyone that people that weren't in play are not going to be in play, but like, I guess I'm wondering what happens if we start with that, like not thinking about what our current boundaries are, but just say like, where does everyone live compared to the closest school, and like what happens if we start to move folks around from that. So not that you don't have enough to do, but I I don't know if other folks have no interest in seeing something like that. I think the other thing for me is trying to think about long term. So I want to disrupt as few students as possible, but I think that's not for me, that's not just in this move, but also thinking about down the road. So if there is a plan that moves the fewest students now, and that maybe that's also about like the high school boundaries, but it means that in 2 or 3 years, we're back here doing the same thing. My personal preference would be to move more students and try to have a plan that has a longevity closer to 8 to 10 years. Again, other folks might not agree, and the public can certainly weigh in, but I guess I would be curious to sort of see what some of the projections are going out on some of the plans that you bring back to us, where things are combined, to sort of try to get a sense of both what does it look like for the next year or two, but what is the projection for like 5-6 years from now if we didn't want to go through this process quite so quickly again. Not that we don't love to see you. We'll invite you back just to come visit and hang out, but.
All right. I see no other questions. Thank you so much for being here, and drive safely to catch your early morning flight tomorrow.
I will. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Ofield. Good job on your first run at the podium. We're excited to have you. All right, we will move on to our cell phone procedures update with Dr. Porter.
It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Adam Taylor and middle school and high school principals.
Here we go. Well, thank you for having us this evening. I am Dr. Adam Taylor. I am the Executive Director for our secondary schools, and here to share with you are our middle school and high school leaders who have come together and taken feedback, had conversations, worked together to really try to come up with some procedures and practices within our schools at the secondary level to address the distraction of cell phones. I do want to iterate that this is not board policy. I know that the language can be very important, and when you're hearing from public comment and all different places that we should call the procedures and practices that we are. So I just want to clarify that. Each of us will take an opportunity to share a little bit about the process we've gone through and the proposal that we have, and then we will continue to make adjustments based on feedback and moving forward into the 24-25 school year. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Galbraith to kick it off. Just joking. Don't mess it up. There you go. Thank you, Dr. Porter.
Of course, they nominated me to go first, right? So I'm Dr. Galbraith. I am the proud principal and have the privilege of serving Battle High School. And I'm just going to start kind of from the basics. So over the past couple of years, we've heard from our community, our teachers, multiple stakeholders, both externally and internally, about the distraction that cell phones have been causing to our learning environment. While we know that CPS has a one-to-one policy for our secondary schools, we also acknowledge that we've seen some challenges recently with that technology. Some things to note is that our one-to-one technology provides us an avenue to educational research, provides some equity that we may not have seen otherwise, and that CPS has invested in this technology, but also the firewalls and the processes and procedures to protect that technology. It is our desire to provide clear and consistent expectations and guidelines for everyone involved, so all stakeholders, around cell phones and smart devices, as well as we've seen an increase of those in school disrupting learning environments. With the full support of my colleagues, our secondary, high school, and middle school principals, we are recommending the following procedures and protocols to you.
Good evening. I'm Chris Drury. I'm principal over at Smithton Middle School. And for the middle school procedures, cell phones, including smart devices, are prohibited in the classroom learning environment, hallways, restrooms, and locker rooms from 7:25 a.m. to 2:35 p.m. So bell rings at 7:25 for class to start, and we release at 2:35 p.m. So during the instructional day. We have included smart devices because we did have that conversation of watches, the ear pods, and things like that that are also creating that. So it's beyond just the cell phone usage. We also expand that into the hallways, restrooms, and locker rooms. Middle school is full of transitions, so we find it's best to limit those distractions by continuing it through all places in the learning environment so that we are not struggling from class to class or place to place. It's just the expectation during the instructional day.
And in the high school, cell phones are prohibited in our learning environments and during instructional time. So some specific tools that we've already been engaging for this include the stoplight system, where teachers are using red or green for kids to know when it's a learning and instructional time versus not. We've also ingrained some 9th grade tech breaks, which I know kind of sounds like crazy, but 5 minutes of a brain break, similar to what they do in elementary school with brain breaks, but for those 9th graders that are transitioning from a 46-minute period to a 90 to sometimes 95-minute period, it's nice to kind of build that stamina with them. And so we are already using some specific tools and resources. I think Mary's going to talk to you about another strategy here in a minute that we're using as well.
So I'm Dominic Falls. I'm the principal at Lane Middle School. So cell phone policies at the middle school level include the smart devices that are prohibited during learning environments, hallways, restroom, and locker rooms from 7:25 to 2:35. At our building, we've been putting our practices in place since last year, and we primarily do 7 to 2:35, and it's powered off and out of sight. So that includes smart watches, devices, AirPods we put away and out of sight. So for us, we've seen a very drastic reduction in our technology misconduct, referrals, as well as a number of things that trickle down from just the use of cell phones in the classroom, in the hallways, et cetera.
Hi, my name's Mary. I'm the principal of Hickman High School, the proud principal of Hickman High School. Thank you for having all of us here today. So you'll see there's some small differences between the high school and the middle school procedures. They're emblematic of the idea of a tiered system of expectations and access. We're hoping to scaffold that as students transition from their middle school point in their life to their high school point in their life, that they're growing over time, both socially and academically. So that small difference there is including those devices. While they're not supposed to be in the learning environments, we are allowing them to have them on their possession. Now, many of you have heard that are from constituents, specifically some in my building, and I would just specifically say to you all, I am impressed with the teachers in my building's ability to advocate, to try new things, and to brainstorm around this work. We spent a lot of time this year looking for that. But some of them have advocated, I know, and said, well, what are we going to do when kids don't do what we ask them to? So on this slide, hopefully, maybe, arrow, thank you. On this side is an example of one tool, or a sample of an example of a tool that we are talking about and strategizing over this summer. This is an example of a tool that's used that when a student wouldn't comply with what we're asking them through this procedure, that we have a place where they can stow that phone during the day. And so this is just an example of one of the ideas that we're trying out as we go through this process.
So through this process, we've had the opportunity to gather feedback and share this information with a number of different groups, including our district leadership, which happens monthly and consists of over 100 leaders within our district. We've taken this to our middle school student advisory council 3 separate months and had conversations with them around it. We've taken it to our high school student advisory council as well, and had conversations with them several months in a row. Our middle school and high school students both had great questions, but were supportive of our efforts to reduce distractions in the learning environment. We've also taken it to our secondary teacher advisory council and gotten feedback from those individuals. And this was produced prior to, it has actually been presented to our elementary teacher advisory council as well. Things that we still have to do, communication is going to be critical in this process as we implement our new procedures. So we still have to provide that clear communication to all secondary families. And then we need to still talk a little bit about what Mary was just talking about, is having clear school-based expectations with building leaders and our entire building staff so that we understand the process and protocols to deal with students who may be resistant at the beginning to our new expectations.
Thank you for having us this evening. I'm Sam Bornhauser. I'm the principal of Gentry Middle School.
And I'm Taylor Drennan, principal at John Warner School. And so we're here to talk to you a little bit about what that building level communication looks like. I think Dr. Taylor said it well when we talk about when you make big changes, you need to make sure that there's a clear communication on what that plan or those procedures look like. When we look at some of these bullets, we talk about what does that start. If we're making this decision now, we're looking at what does that end of the year communication look like, whether that's emails, newsletters, s'mores, some of those things to start that conversation. Let parents ask questions before the year gets out. Sometimes communication in the summer is not the best time to end. But when we also look at the summer, a lot of us send out summer mailings, summer newsletters. I know for my building, we send one out just after the 4th of July holiday saying any new changes. That's how we communicated some of the district initiatives when we had changed on the school lunch to school cafe and some of those other ones, and allows them to kind of start to see it for the first time. A lot of us do weekly emails or newsletters or s'mores, just reiterating that, especially on the front end, with it becoming just kind of fresh in their brain that we are something that we are being consistent on, but also understanding that there's clear practices and procedures. And then using our school website. We know that our website gets a lot more views at the beginning of the school year, so making sure that it's easy to navigate, and also it's front and center with any of our big changes so that they can refer back to that, whether it be handbook or former summer newsletters.
We're also working to ensure we have building and classroom signage. Like Dr. Galbraith talked about, having those red and green signs indicate learning times. Also ensuring our main hallways, our offices, our classrooms have graphics with our cell phone policies and procedures, so that it's clear and understood from everyone. As far as school leadership teams and school staff and summer meetings, we'll collaborate regularly during the summer months to discuss all these items to make sure they're clearly understood as far as these procedures are concerned, the logistics, the operations of them, the expectations. So when school gets going, everyone's clearly aware from school personnel exactly what those procedures are. We will also have agenda items in our back-to-school faculty meetings where we'll discuss those, so it's clear again, communicated across the board for all people involved. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was the way we teach the use of social media. And so one of the things we've done at Gentry is the My Mind, My Media, which was where we've worked hard to understand the influence of media on our kids, and they understand how that media is trying to influence them and manipulate them in ways. And so we work on that and understand that. And so that's another piece of some of the things we do there. All right.
I'm Jacob Adams, principal at Jeff Middle School. So we're going to use our district level communication as well. One of the ways we're going to do that is using our district newsletter and s'more. We're going to collaborate with our chief communications officer and our chief schools officer to ensure that all of our district newsletters to families and staff outline these procedures. So it's really important to get those out from our school level, but then also from the district level, because it shows a better, like a team focus from there. In all of our registration emails, we're going to send those out from the district level, again, highlighting that procedure and putting that out in front of people ahead of time, again, from the district level. We're We're going to use KFRU radio, although I probably will not be the one speaking on KFRU. Our district leadership will, but through previously set up, established relationships that we have with them, just to share that out and really to share the reasoning, basically the presentation we're doing right now. Lastly, looking at front loading on the district website. So again, putting this out in a place where everyone can see it. It's very easy to see from there. So working with our web and multimedia managers to make sure that everyone can see it 24/7.
Good evening, board. I'm Jeff Mielke, principal at Oakland Middle School. I have the opportunity to tell you about basically kind of where we are at with our cell phone, I won't say policy, how we handle cell phones and technology currently. If you've had a chance to look at the behavior education plan, it reads, using, displaying, or turning on personal electronic devices during the school day unless the use is part of the instructional program required by a district-sponsored class or activity or otherwise permitted by the building principal. So if a student violates that, the first step is what we consider response level 1, which is, and honestly, even before we get to that step, I know in our building, probably most buildings, teachers are going to give an informal redirect or two before they actually have to go to that response level 1, which could be an office referral at that point. But typically at a response level 1, there is basically a discussion. A lot of times it's a classroom intervention that the teacher is going to handle without any discipline consequences being handed out. If a student continues to violate that, response level 2, that could involve intervention with or without administrative discipline. In extreme cases, there's also the flexibility that could be up to a 1 day of in-school suspension. The concern that we have is that's where the discipline education plan, that's where it stops with in terms of computer technology misuse. And so Dr. Taylor is going to talk to you about where we would like to head.
So yeah, the question that often comes up is what happens after that if a student continues to refuse to comply with the request from their teacher to put their phone away. That changes the conversation quite a bit to insubordination. And so what you can see here is our response level for insubordination through our behavioral education plan, which still provides opportunities for teaching, for learning, and for communication to not only students but families as well. And this will allow us to document the incidences within our Infinite Campus, whether it be cell phone to insubordination would kind of be the tiered approach, so that we would have that historical record of a student and their what potentially is causing that concern. The third level and the highest level that we would see at this point as we continue to work with our behavioral education plan would be a disruption to the learning environment or disruptive behavior, which then gets up to a level 3. Our goal, our intent, I think everybody knows, would not be to remove students from the building or learning environment. However, with a consistent opportunity to enforce what we have and procedures that we have in place, we do need to consider working with our students who are creating a larger disruption for our entire learning environment. So when a teacher or other students are becoming where they can no longer teach and other students can no longer learn, we're going to have to look at a higher level of enforcement to work through those procedures and practices. So at this time, I'll open it for question and consideration.
Mr. Lyman, kick us off.
All right, we're talking about that thing that we've been wanting to talk about for a while. So number one, this is awesome that this was a collaborative thing. When I heard that everybody was going to get together, all of our secondary admin were going to get together and talk about this, I was like really excited to see how this was going to look. So thank you for that. I think it's been highlighted a couple times that this is going to take some time, and I think we're going to have to emphasize that over and over again. A couple buildings have already got some procedures that they're using that are working, but I think they would all tell you that it took some time for students and families and teachers and administrators to get, I don't want to say get with the program, but get familiar with what's going on. But I think that they would all admit that it works. Real quick, thank goodness we have the BEP. Thank you to Mrs. London and her team for putting that together so that we have this available to be able to use. The one question I have is specifically about the differences in the middle school versus high school thing, specifically when it relates to bathrooms and locker rooms. When it seems to be that, I mean, that's where kids do bad things, is in the bathroom and in the locker room, and outside of that, privacy, et cetera. Why was, it's okay in high schools, but not in the middle schools? Why was it just, locker rooms, bathrooms, cell phones, just not going to be a thing?
I think it's a couple-fold. One, I think our middle schools are a little bit farther along than our high schools. We have at least 3, 4 that I can think of that are currently doing a model very similar to this. And from their viewpoint and perspective and their collaboration, they were really consistent and adamant that adding that particular language to the middle school level. At the high school level, obviously students will have opportunities during passing period. That's typically when we like to see our students use the restroom, sometimes go to a locker room if they have a practice or something after school to retrieve an item. Obviously, I think we all would agree that we don't want our students using cell phones, specifically cameras and things like that, in the restrooms, but that language was not added primarily because of what I referred to as the middle school principals' historic preference of working through this over the last year.
Ms. Farrow.
I have a few things.
Remember, I helped you last time when I was up here.
At the high school level, I'm just struggling with how it is different than our current policy that we have, EHBA, that talks about personal electronic devices should not disrupt the educational process in the school district in any way. And then we have the information from the BEP, which is currently in place today. And what we've seen so far seems to be pretty much the same thing. So I'm having a hard time struggling with what is being proposed that's different than what we're currently doing.
I think what you're seeing here is, by a show here of us here this evening, is a unified effort to make sure that the policy and then the procedures that we have in place are outlined district-wide, and that we're using the tools and resources we have available to enforce them consistently across the district. I'll speak in the eye, knowing as a former principal that that was something that has kind of gotten away from us in the last couple of years, and it's a big challenge that we've seen within our community. I think we all experience it probably sometimes in our own homes, having dinner with our spouses and our family members. And I know my wife will be like, "Put your phone away. This is your time with your family." Those are challenges that I think our nation and our society is starting to deal with. And I think that that's really what we're talking about here, is an opportunity for this group of, fantastic leaders to say that we've heard from our community, although we may have a policy in place, it is not currently being enforced with fidelity.
At the high school level, you also pointed out learning environment, and I heard about a red and green light to tell students when they're in a learning environment and when they're not. And take this for what it's worth, and you guys can talk about it amongst yourselves. But I see that as a slippery slope if we're allowing cell phones in the classroom at all, whether it's an active learning opportunity or it's a time period that they should be working on their own. And I speak from just the experience of a parent who watched the slippery slope invade middle school, where one teacher started allowing it during a class and then another teacher would allow it. And so I just don't know. I would be concerned that allowing it in the classroom at the discretion of a teacher when it's not a learning time, I don't know. Or maybe I'm reading it incorrectly.
So thank you, April. That came from a Career Center teacher at our last teacher advisory council with Dr. Yearwood. And they said, we have problems of our scholars in labs saying this isn't a classroom. So we changed classroom to learning environment. So it could be interpreted that way. Does that make sense? And you also have to understand too, and I'm sure Dr. Taylor and our 4 wonderful high school principals here can tell you, high schools, have a block. And so it's 90 minutes. I'm not very successful doing anything for 90 minutes. So they need to have a break. So there is going to be 2 or 3 minutes in the middle of that at an appropriate time that's instructionally sound, that they're going to be like, yeah, let's take a brain break. So that's another reason too. We expect our high schoolers to have a little bit more freedom with responsibility. We expect them to be a little bit more grown up. Many of them have jobs, of course. And so we expect kind of that level of responsibility to be a little bit more on the scholar, a little less on the principal or the teacher in high school.
And I think finally, I'll just add that, the expectation is that when learning is happening, the devices are not present. So that is something that we collectively, as an administrative group, have to commit to as well.
Mr. Harper.
I think what I've heard the most is that we need clear, very concrete expectations and protocols, consequences, and of course for the collection and storage of the devices. The final product that will be created, that will have very clear, concrete instructions for both the individual students as well as the teachers, because I hear it from both parents and teachers that they want something very concrete.
Yeah, I think that answer is yes. I also think that when you are dealing and working with students, you get into individualized plans with individualized students. So once again, speaking in the eye as a former principal, we would work with families with students who may be consistently having a similar problem, and they would check it in at the beginning of the school day. In one of those lockers, as you saw, the student keeps the key on their wrist, and they do not lose it because that is their access back to their phone. But we worked collaboratively with those families to make that the individualized plan for that student. So there will be a lot of individualized planning that will take place to make sure that we are capturing a lot of the different nuances, because no 2 situations are the same. And what you'll see and have early probably in this is a clarification of, is this insubordination versus just a cell phone being out? Those are all nuances that we'll have to work through in a supportive manner.
And my second question is that, we're talking about this being a procedure. As the policy chair, is there any expectation that you're going to come to the policy committee in the next year after the process is over to form a policy?
Depends what we learn from our reflection and from looking and seeing how this is going.
Yeah, I think this is obviously a journey, although we would like to take a good step forward this year. I personally just believe that there's an opportunity to move forward with that in the future.
Mr. Cobbins.
Good evening. I thank all of you for coming. And I really am impressed with the idea of everybody coming together and doing what you're doing. Question for you is, what do you think about, let's say that all the high schools take all of the ideas that you have, including how you roll this out and how you present it to the parents and to the students, come together and put all of this into, it seems to be a little easier, perhaps, if that message is going out to all of the high schools.
Yeah.
The same way, the same time, and that these procedures are all similar in nature as opposed to each individual.
So that is the intent of this presentation and our willingness to move forward together. And so as you'll see on here with our district level communication, we intend for our messaging from, in collaboration with our chief of communications, to send out a messaging that at our middle school level, this is our expectation. At the high school level, no matter which school you go to, this is the expectation.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Willoughby.
No, it's not just you. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I guess the one thing, not one thing, I have a couple questions and I think more comments than questions, is just when it comes to implementation with our staff, right, and modeling behavior with the phones, like how have y'all talked about that in that way? And I asked this question as a major offender of texting your staff during the workday. I'll be honest, I'm texting my friends and they're responding, so you get mad at me. So in that, I guess how have y'all talked about that in that way?
Well, I think it really, just like with everything in education, it'll start with relationships. We are going to have to spend the first part of the year, of the school year, explaining the why, making sure that our students are understanding that this isn't a punitive approach to the cell phone issue. It is purely about access to education for all of our students within the district so that they have the most beneficial opportunity from our amazing staff across the district. So I think it's going to start with building those relationships so that we can share the why with those students so that we can build that trust with them to know that this is in their own best interest. And I think that's probably the first approach to answering that question.
Okay. And then a comment, Dr. Holes, I think one thing that I think would be really nice is from my experience, I remember when I had subs just allowed things to happen, right? And we'd be texting a bunch. And so just how do we support our subs? And I guess, and that's also in collaboration with y'all as the building leaders of just making sure that they feel empowered to also be hardliners on this, because I think there's a semblance as a sub, right? Like you are there for a day or a couple days, right? And not that you're unwilling to be the hardliner, but sometimes it's just easier to not go down that fight.
I appreciate you bringing it up because I think that's something definitely to consider. And most of our schools, or I would say probably all of them, have some sort of like one pager that the sub receives when they check in, like a folder itself that has rosters and all the things so that we could clearly put that communication on there for every building.
Okay, thank you. And then I think the last thing is more, like I said, just a comment. I mean, to all of our families and to our community, I mean, this is it is our approach as a district to trying to address it, but it's going to take our parents and our families to also help our kids look at healthy usage of cell phones in social media and other forms of media, while also what does that healthy usage look like at school? And as you were talking, Dr. Taylor, around like why these things are there and why punishments exist, but also just helping us in this longer term space, because we only have so much time with them, and y'all are trying to address something as best as possible as the district leaders in your buildings. And so I just deeply appreciate it. I also appreciate y'all coming together in response to teachers to really do this. So thank y'all.
I thank you all for being here. I totally agree that it needs to be a district-wide approach. It's fine to have it broken down by school level. I think my one concern that I have is that the consequence, like for all three of the consequences listed, they all start with a response level 1, which is a classroom intervention. And the feedback that we've gotten from teachers is that they don't have any more steam to write 60 referrals every single day. It's so pervasive. And so I guess what I would like to see developed is a little less onus on the classroom teacher to enforce something and kind of just take it out of the classroom teacher's hands and be like, you put your phone in the box or you're going to the office. I'm speaking to administrators here, so they're like, shut up. But I think, but we've been putting it on teachers to kind of mitigate the behavior. And what we have heard and what I believe to be true is that they're exhausted by that. So that's just some friendly feedback. Yeah.
If I can address that. Yes, we have a few days left of school, and so coming back in August, we need to be collectively committed to this plan so that the burden isn't on teachers. But something also that we've talked about as a principals group is maybe we go to each other's schools and we kind of do an audit, not a catch you for not doing the right thing, but like, hey, I'm going to go to Lang and I'm going to see, are there any teachers that let kids have their phones out? Because that pits teacher against teacher, and that goes against of course the very mission of this. But with any change that we have in schools, it's going to be kind of like stair-stepped, right? We're going to get better at this, and then we're going to support this, and we're getting better at this. And so with teachers' help, but it's not just on them. We need parents, we need teachers, we need administrators, and students all together too. So I think it's not going to be a click your fingers and it all gets better, but if we all work together, but not, require so much from our teachers, then I think we can make this work.
And for what it's worth, all of the parent feedback I have gotten is very supportive.
Good.
I think my son would be like, "Mom, how dare you?" But he's graduating, so we don't have to worry about him. April, I believe you had another.
Can I just add to that real quickly?
Sure.
I think it will be a partnership with our teaching staff as well, though, because I think when we're communicating with families, just like anybody who has somebody who's in the school system, they want to hear from their teachers as well. So there'll be opportunities within reporting to have those conversations too, so that it's not just always a principal directed call or conversation. We do need our teaching staff, to be helping us document how often is this happening. Is it becoming an insubordinate issue or disruptive behavior? Is it causing a disruption to your learning environment?
All right, I'm gonna go backwards because what you brought up, as a teacher, I look at these, the BEP thing, and it seems like I'm gonna go through the situation with computer technology use, and then I'm gonna get to starting over with insubordination, and then I'm gonna start over with disruptive behavior. Is that correct? No, okay.
And that's kind of right where I was going with that.
Okay.
That documentation.
Okay.
Right? Like, we don't want to jump to insubordination when it's the first time a student potentially had it out on their desk or something.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how many times do we do the same thing and just escalate it from computer use to insubordination to disruptive behavior? Okay. The other two things that I had, I believe we probably have some students that have IEPs or 504s that perhaps have to use computer or the personal devices. And obviously we want to make sure that they're not prohibited. But I think even important is making sure that when they have a substitute, that the substitute is aware that that particular child has some sort of, special permission, because we're going to be hounding this and pounding it, and they're going to want to, abide by that, and we don't want to get that student caught up in a mistake.
Yeah, I think that's just along the lines of those procedures that we have for our substitutes. We have students that have special privileges for restrooms and things like that, where we leave documentation.
And then the last thing I had was, and I think this is where Paul was leading, but I could be wrong, when we were talking about concrete plans and procedures and expectations being sent out, you talked a lot about, kind of individualized conversations and plans with parents, and they might be checking it in to the office at the beginning of the day. What I'm thinking of is, what is the communication to parents and students that's going to be going out, and when, as to not only this expectation, but in our building we are going to have XYZ PDQ, and how is that going to be communicated and when? Because I would hate to see that communicated in the summer newsletter on July 29th.
April, when you say PDQ, other
I'm
letters?
just, yeah, I don't know.
Whoa, don't screw it up, Taylor.
I'm just throwing out letters.
Do you mean this?
I know the alphabet.
Oh, like an example.
I'm just talking.
So
yeah.
it's going to be early and often. I mean, it's going to be, I'd like for them to get through summer school. Before the big, but like Taylor, I think Taylor, you said after July 4th, right? Send it out. But we're also going to communicate in end of school things and those s'mores and those kind of things.
Yeah, because I just, as a parent, I would want to know, if your child has this out, these are the things that are going to happen. Are your teacher's going to redirect to the student, or the teacher's going to do this, and then, ultimately this could happen. Just more of what that looks like when the school has to deal with the cell phone issue.
Sure. And kind of to answer your escalation question,
Yes.
we hope that any consequence is an opportunity to change behavior.
Of course.
But if it's not changing, just like if Adam and I were talking in class constantly and we didn't stop, then at a certain point, you as the teacher, you would be writing us up for insubordination, because it's more than just disruption, and it's more than just a classroom kind of issue. So you can think about escalation in lots of different ways. And cell phones are one way of distraction, but there's lots of other ways we can distract.
Oh, yeah.
I think Ms. Snodgrass had a comment.
Mostly just because, in part, Dr. Porter mentioned summer school, and so I guess I'm wondering if there has been a thought to implementing this for summer school with a smaller group of students as a way to sort of jumpstart it, or if that is something that is, I understand that the schedule at summer school and things is very different, and it's a different atmosphere sometimes, so maybe that's not appropriate. The other thing that I guess I'm just wondering and hoping that we're thinking about is, I know you were saying, right, like if there's students that need an individual plan in terms of locking up a phone, things like that, but thinking specifically about middle schoolers who, if it's turned off and like gone for the day, and I don't know, speak for my own middle schooler who loses the things that are in her pocket when they're in her pocket somehow. Wondering if there are students, or even at the high school level, right, that are taking the bus and that might need it at different times. And I know at the high school level, getting a locker is sort of like, I don't know, like an epic quest or something, to be able to actually get one. Might there be opportunities or places for secure storage, not for students who are in trouble, but for students who just want a secure place to put their phone during the day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have those lockers in place. I think that'll, need to be re-looked at how accessibility to those. Obviously, our students carry backpacks and things like that throughout the day. But, just that communication and opportunity, I think there is opportunity to have those secure places in the building. And our intent is that the student, through those opportunities, the student has the possession themselves. That's something that, is still to work through and consider, is like, we don't want to be taking cell phones from kids. There's a liability issues with that, of course, but we do know that our students will have access to places where they could lock their phone up if they so choose during the school day.
Mr. Lyman.
Kind of throughout all of this, and it seems like it's a kind of a living document that is going to be kind of a work in progress as we see how things kind of go. I think it's important for our teachers and our staff to, understand that the empowerment that they have with this, and that I think we could probably poll the board and say, yeah, you guys do what you need to do to, make sure that our classrooms are those learning environments, that we need. I think in a lot of cases, sometimes our teachers have felt with cell phone policies and that it hasn't been there, and I certainly understand why, but I hope that with these new procedures that we're having, that they feel that empowerment to do, the things that they need to do, that you guys, do the things that you need to do with following these procedures to, again, like I said, strengthen those learning environments and make sure that everybody that's in there is, learning, because that's ultimately what we're here for, so.
I think just like with everything that we do in any organization and communicate, it's just going to be that flow of communication so that we can continue to grow and enhance our ability to support all of our stakeholders.
Okay. All right. First and foremost, I want to thank Dr. Porter and Mr. Adams for helping to organize this. As we look at the group that's here at 8 o'clock at night after getting up at 6 and 7 in the morning to be here, to support each other, to be able to say this is what we as a CPS family, the secondary family, will do, speaks volumes to your commitment, speaks volumes that, yes, we can come together behind a common initiative. And I know that there will be bugs, there will be successes, there will be failures, there will be tweaks, there will be, this is new territory for us. And for me, as superintendent, I ask, stay the course, be consistent, encourage your teachers, let's implement with fidelity. I know that that's speaking to the choir, But I just want to thank each of you for the contributions that you're making to this initiative. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Go home, get some sleep. Tomorrow morning's going to come early. Thank you again to all of our secondary principals for coming tonight. Next, we're going to have a professional development plan update. I don't see Mr. Moore here. I think it's Dr. Woods. Yeah, our Director of Professional Development. Excellent.
Okay. Nope. I just want to make it full screen. Oh, you're the best. I see it. You got it? Present. Okay. Okay. All right, well, good evening, everybody. I'm here to present this 24-25 CPS-PD plan, which you all had a copy of in your board packet, I believe. Hold on. Totally got it. Okay, so I just want to start with how did we get here? This was actually a really long process. But it started with the PD needs assessment, which we did back in January, which we sent to all of our staff. And then once we got the results back from that, we conducted a review of data. And I'll talk about the groups we talked about or went through that data with. But the data points we emphasized were the needs assessment from the teachers, student achievement data such as iReady, MAP, EOC, our attendance data, our climate and culture survey, our discipline data, our mental health checklist data, and our teacher experience levels. So we tried to get a really broad picture of just where is our school district, what is our present reality. And so our district-wide PD needs assessment data looks something like this. I also broke it down by grade span, but just for demonstration purposes. And I highlighted some responses blue just because they were the ones that received the most responses, okay? And so we had it kind of broken down into two topics that everyone answered questions about. And then everyone also had questions that went on that are more department specific, and that data was sent on to their coordinators. And so if I'm a high school math teacher, I answered these two questions, but then I answered questions from Melissa Fike about specific needs for secondary math teachers. So once we had all this data collected, we did this analysis in collaboration with the Professional Development Committee and also with district leadership. And so the Professional Development Committee consists of teachers. We have representatives from every building. We met in the lower level conference room and we took time to walk around and examine the data and draw conclusions and take notes. And then at the end of each of these meetings, I asked the group to identify what their big rocks were from this data. What are your biggest takeaways? Because frankly, to say that we're going to address every need in the district with the professional learning plan is ambitious, okay? And so what I asked them to identify is where should we focus our efforts? What's the biggest bang for our buck? And so we called that our big rocks. And the groups, both groups, and I'll show here the results in just a moment, but both groups identified instruction and engagement and behavior and social emotional learning as their top choices for our big rocks. And I think that those align super well with the data that we looked at. And so I was not surprised by those results. And we also added in curricular learning and revision and curricular learning / revision and grading practices, as those are things that we exist to do, right? We want to make sure our students are learning the curriculum. And so that's always going to be one of our learning goals. And so when you look at the big rocks from our two groups, the Professional Development Committee is here on the left, and the district leadership team is on the right. Again, I asked them to identify two big rocks, and then I compiled the results. And then I color-coded it by what I considered to be related topics. I got more responses than what's on the page, but everything that's not on the page received one vote, and so didn't really seem to be in the majority at this time. And so you can see I coded yellow for behavior and social and emotional issues, and I coded blue for instruction and engagement. And it came out pretty clear with both groups, and this wasn't at the same time. So I was super excited when they both came to the same conclusion, because that makes my job way easier. But one important point before we get into like the emphasis areas for the following year is that I think our focus in PD needs to be as much as possible about actionable techniques. And what I mean by that is I actually borrowed a quote from Doug Lemov, who wrote Teach Like a Champion, which we're going to talk a little bit about here in a moment. But he said, what ultimately helped me improve my teaching was when a peer told me something very concrete, like when you want them to follow your directions, stand still. If you're walking around passing out papers, it looks like the directions are no more important than all of the other things you're doing. Show that your directions matter, stand still. Over time, it was this sort of concrete, specific, actionable advice, far more than reminders that I must have high expectations, that allowed me to raise expectations in my classroom. My one sentiment that the PDC shared with me and just my own personal experience is that PD is a lot more meaningful when I have something I can go back and do in my classroom that makes a meaningful difference. Theory and reminders are important, but more important is how do I then put that into action? And so one thing that we're going to really try to emphasize as we move forward is what are we taking away from each of our learning experiences? So our first big rock is instruction and engagement. We are going to begin with champion teaching. We have selected 3 techniques to implement district-wide next school year. Those techniques are called Strong Start, No Opt-Out, and Precise Praise. To arrive at those techniques, we had training for all of our administrators, our instructional mentors, and then our principals gave input via vote to identify which techniques were most appropriate district-wide. Now, this book that we're using, I should have also mentioned, we are going to have training available this summer for teachers who want to engage in more training around champion teaching, but we will be training everyone as a district on these 3 techniques. But ultimately, it's not about a specific resource. It's about teaching practices, putting a name to them and doing them consistently and intentionally every day. And so these are the 3 we're going to begin with. Hopefully we see lots of success with these, but more importantly, we check to see if they're being successful and we ask for feedback. And then we see where we go from here. Okay, and so maybe champion teaching continues to be our resource, maybe something else. But we want to put powerful teaching techniques in all of our educators' hands. In behavior and social emotional learning, we have settled on several behavior PD threads, knowing that the needs of our educators are diverse in terms of what they want support with in behavior management. And so we're going to primarily embed these threads in our October 2 through 4 PD days, but we'll also try to have other opportunities throughout the year. And the strategies are listed here on the slide. But these topics were primarily selected from the PD needs assessment. So if I can just go back here for a minute, you can see the list of strategies here. You don't have to memorize them, but if you can just remember a couple for a second. When we go back, here was the PD needs assessment, and in the left-hand column on social emotional behavior topics, we're responding to extreme behaviors, strategies for students who avoid work, strategies for students with ADHD symptoms, and you'll notice on the other slide I had support for students who are neurodivergent, which would include ADHD, trauma and discipline, trauma-assumed classroom strategies. Okay, so we are taking these behavior PD threads directly from what teachers are telling us they want support with. And then the last big rock is curricular learning. I believe you all have seen drafts of the instructional framework, is that correct? Okay, so we're going to begin our learning about the instructional framework. And so we have a nice new graphic for the instructional framework, but our goals as we move forward is to provide teachers with a detailed overview of the instructional framework and its components, to equip teachers with the necessary skills and strategies to effectively implement the instructional framework in their classrooms, and to create a professional learning community where teachers can collaborate and share best practices for implementing that framework. One really important takeaway is that mastery is not built in a day, or a year, or potentially multiple years. This plan and its components, I think, will likely require multiple years to do well. We'll continue to solicit feedback and go through the process of analyzing that feedback and data so we know when it's time to move forward. But saying these are our 3 big rocks and we're going to get them all moved next year, I hope we move them all a little next year, but we're not going to get them to an end point next year. Okay, but we're going to begin that work. Our future considerations certainly continue the yearly needs assessment. I want to make sure we're always asking where our needs lie. There's no way to really anticipate what will become emergent. They may stay consistent, but we'll stay responsive. And then we also need to find ways for more differentiated professional learning. Like I said in the behavior threads, the needs of our teachers are diverse in behavioral management learning, but they're diverse in every variety of learning. And so that's something I want to explore avenues for. It's also a really heavy lift. And so it's something that we're going to be working on together to try to make progress in. I do believe PowerSchool Professional Learning, the tool that we have adopted as our professional learning management system, will help facilitate this. But it's going to be a multi-year project to build up capacity for that differentiated professional learning. But that's where we need to go, in my opinion. All right, so this is our list of work days, which I know you've seen next school year's calendar, so this is not news, but those are our list of work days when we'll be doing this learning. And then, do we have questions?
Ms. Brow.
Okay, so you pointed out the big rocks that the Professional Development Committee identified, as well as district leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not a teacher, so I could be completely, off my rocker. I'm surprised that instruction wasn't higher, given our current achievement levels. And so my question from the Teach Like a Champion, the 3 focus areas, is, are any of those focused on instructional practices to help address achievement? I mean, ideally, you would hope that if students have better engagement, they would naturally learn more. But I'm just concerned when we have, 7% of our Black students are proficient in math from 3 through 8, that do we know how to teach them math? And is that, so am I off my rocker?
No, you're not off your rocker. Okay. I understand your question. So a couple of thoughts. One is, I was not terribly surprised to see instruction maybe slightly below behavior management, because as someone who, I taught in the classroom for 13 years. And so and maybe this is going to sound like, I don't want it to sound as though we don't have anything to learn. Of course, we always can learn and grow our instructional practice. But I do think that it would be fair to say that behavior is a more emergent challenge at the moment. And frequently, I think, impedes some of our instruction efforts, right? And not to say we shouldn't still be focused on instruction, we should be, but I think if I were looking at it from my teacher lens, I would see which one's a bigger need to me individually. It might be behavior. And of course, every teacher is different. I know we have teachers who are probably crushing it on the classroom management side and want to focus more on instructional techniques to grow their craft, right? But I'm not terribly surprised by that. To answer your question about Teach Like a Champion, there are 63 techniques in the book. So answering generally, they're a good mixture of what I would call engagement strategies, instruction strategies for engagement. And so what I mean by that is, for example, no opt-out. I'll give that as an example. Put simply, if a student, if I were to call on you and in my math class, so I'm a high school math teacher, and I call on you to answer a question, and your response is, I don't know. There's a multitude of reasons you might say, I don't know, right? You may legitimately not know. You may have not been paying attention and want me to leave you alone. Maybe you don't like me and don't want to talk to me. But I need to make sure you do know, right? Like that's my job as the teacher. And so, so the purpose of this technique is twofold. One is I want to make sure you have the answer. And so there's a series of scaffolds that the technique talks about how am I going to make sure that you have that answer before I leave you alone, right? And also it builds in a certain degree of accountability for our students, knowing Dr. Woods is not going to let me just say I don't know. He's going to make sure I get the answer. And so I'm just going to pay attention so I can give him the answer and he won't continue to talk to me, right? Like, which and elementary kids are not as, at least in my experience, is not as averse to talking to their teacher, but I was a high school teacher, and so I kind of know how that works. And so that's one example of a technique that I would call like both instructional and engagement, right? Like we're going to make sure you get the content, and we're going to talk about how we make sure you get that. And also it builds in some engagement via accountability, right? And so there are a host of techniques about engagement in this book. There are a host that I would call largely academic oriented. And so the idea is it can become a toolbox, but we also, 3 is a good number to start with, not 63. And so this is where we're going to start. And then, we reassess later to see if it's something we want to continue to pursue.
I have something. Thank you for putting this together. I'm sure this took you more than a couple of days
It took
to
a
put
little bit.
together. And I know you did you gave a presentation to the board in a work session a while ago, and it might have been after that January, the survey, or it might have
I
just
think it
been
was after the October PD days.
It might have
Yeah.
been, but it was full of data, which was really helpful for us to see. And so where I'm going with this, what I would love to know is what types of behaviors are teachers struggling with? Are we talking about like talking in class? Are we talking about cell phones? Are we, because that might be going away, like, fixed it.
Yeah.
Or are we talking about violence? Just to be able to understand how that concern that is showing up from teachers correlates with like our office referral data and our OSS
Certainly.
data, because overall referrals and OSS are going down.
Right.
But then we look at this and we see that responding to extreme behaviors is highlighted blue because it's super high. So I guess I would just, and part of those PD, like getting some quantifiable data about what behaviors are we talking about?
Yeah.
that are-
Yeah, that's certainly something we can ask. We could draw some conclusions from the data, but I would only be guessing at what someone considers an extreme behavior, right? Because at least my experience, not everyone sees the same behavior event through the same lens, right? And so,
and the age of the kid.
well, absolutely right,
matters too.
but yeah, we could dig a little deeper in terms of what specifically, are you struggling with when it comes to extreme behaviors? Same for work avoiders; those come in different varieties as well, and so we can dig into that as well.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lyman.
This seems like it's another one of those things where, well, we listen to teachers, which is always a good thing, to see what they need and then construct things around that. But it's going to take some time to kind of get stuff worked out to see what those changes are. But we're going to continue to ask teachers kind of every year, like you have been, is this working, et cetera, and then make those modifications. Like if we're seeing 2 out of the 3 of these are gelling and stuff's working really well, but one of them may not, we could change it out
Right.
for one of the 60 others.
Right.
Sort of thing.
Or another resource.
Sure.
Right.
And then it seems like, while I agree with Ms. Frau that, instruction seems like it should be higher, it does seem, though, that if you can get students engaged and get them interested in something, whether it's something super simple, just, I was about to say like super simple like geography, because that's what I like, or, the genetic makeup of fruit flies, like Mrs. Gilzo likes. She's out there somewhere. It's one of those things that if we can find something that interests kids, that's what's going to get them engaged, and potentially is going to, dissuade a lot of the behavior stuff. Are we in the process of doing this? Are we looking at teachers or identifying teachers or staff that have come up with creative ways to get kids engaged on what could be considered otherwise boring topics?
That's a wonderful question.
Not that the Pythagorean theorem or any of that sort of stuff is boring, but you know what I mean? Just it's,
I really don't. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. Donald Duck and Mathmagically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Woods, I can help with that one. Yes, we're looking at what you call statistics that show high growth teachers that have, or special needs population, or students that that take on, I call it not the gifted group, and are growing them at a faster rate even of some of our gifted scholars. So we have identified that. Dr. B that's here with us has helped us to put that data together. And we're looking at ways that we can capture those practices. As a matter of fact, we've started documenting that so that we can use it for other teachers out there. Dr. Porter and her group, along with the coordinators, are actually capturing that data so we can have a sort of a collection or go-to group to say, this is where the practices are. And something else I want to draw your attention to, as far as instruction is concerned, we do have a high percent. When you look at student engagement strategies, 295, I believe it's the highest so far. That has a lot to do with instruction. It has to do with, are you making your instruction relevant? In other words, are the scholars able to relate to it? Are you actually looking at a level of rigor that's actually challenging scholars? So there's a whole lot that goes behind these as far as the instructional realm is concerned. Small group instruction, that's right above there. So it is, in there. And Dr. Woods has done a magnificent job doing his PD sessions of addressing some of these, in this last October. That's why I think it was so successful. But I think going forward, we should see, this sort of instructional pieces coming in. It's not just strictly just behavior. Behavior is critical. Behavior is critical. But we also are seeing the sort of things moving towards that instructional realm as well. So I want to share that.
One point I would add to that question as well is, as you all probably know, I started in this position on July 1 last summer. And so one thing I'm really excited about is we sent out a call for presenters for our October PD conference last Friday. And so the opportunity to solicit the expertise within our own district, and frankly, we got lots of presenters from within our own district for this past October, but it was very short notice. And frankly, I did not put out a call for presenters at large because everyone was trying to get ready to start the school year, and I thought people might run me out of town. But asking 5 months in advance, I feel really good about soliciting our own experts within our district to come and share those practices around an instruction and engagement that work well for them. And then on the back end, just like as we did this past October, there'll be session evaluations, and we'll learn pretty quickly who's sharing information that people want to hear, and then can we continue to utilize those people and convince them to continue to share their expertise. So while I wouldn't call that me going into every classroom and taking notes about which of our educators are really crushing it with engagement, I think we're going to find out pretty quickly from our colleagues who they believe are doing a great job. And I'm hopeful that we'll get lots and lots of respondents to that. Today's Monday, I sent it Friday. I have 24 proposals already. So I'm super, really excited about that. I hope they continue to come at that rate because I'd like lots of opportunities for our staff. So.
Ms. Brown, you have another comment?
This is probably more of a comment or question for you. So are we approving this at the work session, the PD plan?
Thank you so much. So according to our policies, the board has to approve the professional development plan. So we are considering this the first read of the professional development plan, and then it will be posted as an action item on our work session. And that's when it will come up for approval, so that, that's only May 23rd.
Yeah,
so you don't have to wait until June or July to.
It's fine. I know everyone is going to want to read it really soon. So no, but I am going to send it out to staff. And so I know you will. I meant all of our staff. They hang on every word of my emails. And so I will share it out, but I'll make sure it's board approved before I do that. Of course, I mean, they can see the draft now if they look at the board agenda, but I'll get a communication out to everybody after it's final and approved.
Right. So with that, if anyone has any additional questions after reading this and after hearing the presentation, send them to Dr. Yearwood, and then he can
And I'll plan to be here at the
channel
work session.
us to the appropriate person to answer the question, probably Dr. Woods. All right. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Woods.
you.
We have a couple of other presentations on the agenda, but it was suggested by another board member that we might jump ahead to one of our new business items, 10B, which is the consideration of Chapter 100 bond project, just because we have several guests with us from Ready, so that they don't have to sit here for another hour waiting to go. If we could possibly take a short recess. So I'm going to move that we recess until that clock says 8:50. That gives us a quick break to kind of
Second.
reset. Okay, there's a second motion, or there's a motion and a second to recess till 8:50. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Yep.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we'll take a short recess, and then is there any objection to having hearing item 10B next? Seeing none, we'll go ahead with that. See you back here at 8:50 on that clock.